Hello and welcome to the Being Human podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Bottaro, and we're going to be completing what we started last week with another two little snippets from the Ave Institute series on human person and AI. What we're looking at is the emergence of artificial intelligence growing, its models becoming better. The versions of these things are pretty crazy. And I think it's really just only a matter of time before what the AI is able to do in terms of technology and also the material technology that's happening with plastics and robotics just mimics new human persons. And we're going to just have a world of robots that can look and think and act and feel and seem like humans in all the ways possible. Or is it all the ways possible? That's what we're going to be looking at here in this episode. My proposition is that there will be real limits in terms of what the AI can do. It's not going to be what we think the limits are, because the robots will basically act exactly like how humans act. And I think we're going to be at a point in time when it's going to be almost indistinguishable, maybe completely indistinguishable, whether or not a person is, if an experience of this other thing in your direct field of experience is a robot or a human person. And so what will be the difference? And we're in a whole world of trouble because I don't think a lot of people are being formed to even appreciate or discern the difference. There will be a difference, obviously, but that's what we're talking about through this lens of John Paul II, personalism, and really a psychological idea of what does it mean to have freedom, and what does it mean to really love, and so what do we actually need in our relationships, and can that be mimicked by even the most perfect articulation of a mirroring of something that seems in all ways possible to be human? Tell me what you think. If this stirs anything up for you, if you have AI anxiety or paranoia or anything else that's coming up for you, we and especially because honestly we really do need relationships, and we need real human relationships. And there's a lot of people who are already lonely, who are suffering in different ways, and we are here to help navigate that. To give you a sense of what might be possible through professional accompaniment. That's what we have available through our program called Mentorship. You can check that out at CatholicPsych.com/mentorship. And what we're doing is on the cutting edge of really zeroing out the fluff and zeroing in on what the essential element of therapeutic accompaniment really is, what it looks like. And we use technology. So I'm not afraid of this conversation at all, because we use technological advances. In our mentorship model, we're using an app. We're using voice messages. Well, we've whittled down to the core essential elements of what is actually happening in a human interaction to help people grow, to cause change to happen, and to be at least facilitate God as the agent of change. But what can we do to open up? I hope this blesses you.
I spent the last 10 years learning how to help people using the best techniques available in psychology integrated with the Catholic faith. Now we've figured out that there's a better way to help people than just slapping a Catholic label on the same secular model of therapy you find anywhere else. The real question is, how will we make this shift to a new model of truly Catholic accompaniment, keeping the psychological sciences in mind while opening up to a more human and more effective approach? This podcast is here to give you the answer. Join me and follow along as I take you behind the scenes of what this new model looks like, using recorded audio from sessions working with my team, with colleagues, and even directly with clients. My name is Dr. Greg Bottaro, and I want to welcome you to the Being Human podcast.
All right, here we are, ready to go deeper into another week unpacking this crazy world of AI and what's developing around us. What can we make sense of here through this lens of Catholic anthropology? What matters? So we've covered already vertical and horizontal transcendence and what that means for understanding the objective, true, good, and beautiful, and also how we come out of ourselves to be in relationship with each other. Both of these things are incredibly important for understanding our next concept for today, which is freedom, human freedom. Now, there's a huge debate in academic philosophy, academic science, in the world of psychology about free will. And there are many people who think that we don't have free will. And then, of course, we do believe, as Catholics, from an integrated approach, that freedom and free will is a significant part of our dignity and our identity as humans. That's something we're going to unpack more in the next unit. We'll be looking at the actual experience of love and what does love mean. But for right now, we just want to look at how much free will is a necessary element of love. If there's no freedom, there's no love. And if there's no ability to sort of step outside of ourselves and connect with something bigger than ourselves, and we are really just enclosed within the system of our own internal programming, never to see a connection to what's outside of us, then in many ways we can actually think of ourselves as not having free will. And this is a really interesting concept when it comes to psychological study, because there are many ways in which our freedom is restricted. There are many things that do restrict our freedom, and things that you think are your free choice actually are maybe not so free. We can see this happening in addiction. We can see this happening with trauma. You know, there are diagnoses of PTSD, of post-traumatic stress disorder, or many other behavioral sort of disorders that we see people acting in ways that they may not want to act. We also know, spiritually speaking, St. Paul says, why do I do the things I don't want to do? And I don't do the things that I do want to do. So if the psychological sciences are saying that our freedom is restricted, we can see around us that people are acting behaviorally in ways that they don't want to. And we even have St. Paul telling us that spiritually we're doing things that we don't want to do. How can we possibly consider ourselves free? What does that actually mean? Well, one of the things that John Paul II has opened up in his anthropology, in his personalism, is this idea that there are layers or dimensions within us in which we do connect to something outside of ourselves that is objective. And through a capacity within us, we can make choices based on what is outside of us, even if so much of what's going on inside of us is kind of determined, is kind of influenced, or even hijacked. So I like to use addiction as an example of this. If we talk about freedom and addiction, if somebody's an alcoholic, their freedom is severely restricted. You could say, like, well, if you're at the party, or if you're at the bar, or if you're at the dinner, and somebody says, hey, do you want a drink? Just say no. Just why would you say yes? You know you're going to drink too much. You know you have that problem. Why don't you just refuse the first drink? You're not drunk yet, right? If you're sober, you have clarity of mind. You can just say no. And, it's like almost like we understand that drunkenness is a restriction of freedom. So just don't get drunk. And then, you'll be able to make clear-headed decisions. Well, it turns out that if there's an addiction, there's something else going on psychologically and psycho-emotively, that there's a chemical connection, a hormonal connection, a neurological connection, where it's almost like somebody's already drunk. I'm not saying that it's a lack of sobriety, but it's a lack of freedom still. And so maybe somebody sitting at the bar, at the party, or at the dinner table actually can't say no if somebody comes and offers them a drink. Now, at that point, we would say, well, if that's the case, is there any part of the person that has awareness of what's happening or what could happen? So, when did you make the decision to get into that situation in the first place? could you have decided to not be in that situation? Now, of course, maybe people are minding their own business and they happen to be walking along, and then somebody just comes up out of nowhere and says, hey, do you want a drink? And maybe they can't say no. And they didn't plan that to happen, and maybe that's even outside of their control also. And, then we talk about culpability. Was that person culpable? Well, maybe not. Maybe there's nothing they could have done to stop that random stranger from coming up and putting a drink in front of him. But I would say probably more times than not, there's the other kind of situation where at some point there is a discernment process or a thought pattern, some kind of decision-making process that occurs. And what that means is you're opened up to sort of like the reality of what's about to happen. And somebody invites you to the party, invites you to the bar, invites you to the dinner, and there's probably going to be drinking there. So then what can you do differently? Now, it might be the case that somebody is even then not able to say no. The addiction might be so deep, might be so all-encompassing, that just the mere hint of a possibility of having a reason to drink elicits all those same biochemical, hormonal, neurological reactions that make a person start acting already in an unfree way, a determined way. And they say, yes, I'll come to the dinner, knowing full well there's probably going to be wine, and it's going to be poured in front of them, and they're going to be drinking it, and it's going to be the beginning of the end. Okay, well, how did a person end up in that situation where they were invited? Maybe this is a situation after work, at the end of a long day, and people get together in the coat room or the lunch room or whatever it is, and there's little chatter after work, and that's typically where the invitations are made, when people are making these plans to go out. And so when you're thinking about closing up for the day, and you're packing up your briefcase or putting your computer away, whatever, and you're thinking about your exit plan for the day, are you going to make that stop by the break room and have that end of day chit chat? Could you say no at that point? And maybe your day was so bad, maybe you can't. Maybe if I go to the break room, they're going to invite me out to the bar. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to take the drink. This is going to happen. And maybe already in that situation, you're already feeling restricted. Maybe less so, but maybe not all the way free. Well, if you look for where the freedom is, you will find it. In other words, keep tracing the process backwards. Think about this outside of yourself. And this is when we have consciousness entering into the picture. This is when you have awareness of your thought patterns, self-awareness. This is when you're participating in a process in which you are seeing a bigger picture, connecting to the values that you think are important, and you're making decisions based on that. That's what freedom looks like. That's in the person. Now, the thing is, we are not in a vacuum. We don't exist as isolated islands. No man is an island. And so all of these ideas that we've been talking about, starting with vertical transcendence and now talking about freedom, only makes sense in light of this other idea of going out of ourselves towards another person. And our freedom is actualized in relationship with other people. So an important part of that is knowing that you are participating in an engagement out of your freedom with another person's freedom. This becomes incredibly important for the deepest sense of human flourishing. Now, there are places for experience in this world where you're not engaging with another person's freedom, and it's still part of the flourishing life. If you have pets, well, you could still be engaging with your pets, and it's a lovely part of life. And they're not making decisions out of freedom to be reciprocating anything in relationship with you. It might feel like relationship, and sometimes it's very consoling, and it will give you what you need. But you're not returning a human gift to a human. And a human is not becoming a better version of himself or herself when it's an animal. And so a human becoming a saint is very different than an animal playing a part in another human's life. So again, I don't want to trigger any kind of complaint here or resistance to these ideas, because I know some people just love their pets, and pets are very lovable, and they are very loving. However, they're not human. What humans require out of each other and what humans give to each other, it opens up a very specific, beautiful, and deep capacity of our coming out of ourselves and growing and becoming better versions of ourselves. So as it simply comes down to it, once again, AI will never be able to do what a human can do at that level. Can an AI provide some kind of instrumentation, some kind of skill set, some kind of tool to enhance human life? Absolutely, 100%. But we have to be very careful that what we're looking for AI to do is not a replacement of what we need humans for. There are many things that humans are currently doing that can be replaced by tools and instruments. But we must never lose sight of the fact that we actually need humans to do human things, and we'll never be able to replace that. So again, this is all kind of developing in the same direction of understanding the ultimate purpose of our humanity and the ultimate place for the tools that we can use within it. And hopefully this helps spark some of these ideas as you're reflecting on the place for AI, as you're thinking about the way that things are developing and moving into the future, especially as AI gets better and better and people are seeking for AI to mimic more accurately the human experience. God bless you. All right, here we are. So to finally wrap up this little series on AI and understanding the human person in light of what AI is pushing us to, especially through the lens of John Paul II, we're going to talk about love. Love is the fullest culmination of the purpose of our humanity. And, last time we were talking about freedom and how to move out of ourselves, understanding the true, good, and beautiful as those transcendentals, and finding in ourselves a place where we can make decisions that are ordered towards love. Even though there's a lot that restricts us from having freedom, like we talked about, we will always have some capacity in us to make a good decision. And that good decision that we can open up to is an indication of our freedom. So then we want to start thinking about this. Is there a simple way to know how to make a good decision? What makes a good decision? And we started talking about the vertical transcendentals, understanding truth and goodness and beauty. So decisions that are in line with what is true, not following what's false or untrue. Decisions that are for beauty instead of the distortion of beauty or ugliness. And decisions that are for the good and not evil. And those are super abstract. And so it's always going to be a little bit of a discernment process to figure out how to apply these transcendentals to this very specific choice I have to make. Somebody invited you to come home with them to go visit their family for the weekend. They need a little extra support. Somebody asked you to help them work on a project. Maybe somebody asked you to give them your answers to a paper. And they're stuck in a bind. Somebody in their family just died. They had to leave for a funeral. Or they're going through a hard time in a relationship and they just had a big breakup. And they're really suffering. And I mean, come on, what's the big deal? It's just a little paper. And it's, they already kind of know it, but they just needed to know, the specifics that were talked about in class. And they would get it right had they been there. But for this tragedy that happened in their life, they just couldn't be there. How do you make that decision? What are your principles? How are you thinking through? All of these things can be ordered towards one even simpler concept, which might seem more abstract, but also actually is probably the most concrete and specific thing you could ever consider, and that is love. What does it mean to love? Now we can listen to Jesus, and Jesus tells us, I've come to serve, not to be served. He tells us to forgive our enemies. And he also tells us that we'll know his disciples by love. So obviously love is really, really important. We know from Aquinas that love means to will the good of another. And we also know from John Paul II, the personalistic norm, which is that a person is the kind of being in which love is the only appropriate response. A person is never to be used as a means to an end, especially if that end is one's own selfish pursuits. So, well, there's a lot here. What are we really looking at here? We're seeing that human excellence is to be embedded within a fabric of relationships in which all of these connections between all of us, like fibers that make up a blanket, all of these interconnected relationships are all forming this larger fabric of the human community. And that in order for these fibers to interact with each other, there are systems of giving and receiving. And the giving has to be coming from the person as a primary intention, and the receiving is what we are doing in response to other people's gift. Notice that the word taking is not being used. Notice that the word using is not being used. Taking and using are opposites of love. So then, again, we're thinking about this in the most practical terms. How do you make good decisions? Every single circumstance is a process and opportunity for discernment. What are the abstract principles here? What are the abstract, the premises of the true, the good, and the beautiful? How does my decision of how I choose to act in this particular situation help me become more a deeper part of this fabric of the communion of all of humanity, the body of Christ? And any decision that is against the true, the good, or the beautiful is actually a bit of a separation of these fibers. It's tearing a little hole in the fabric in the body of Christ. It's pulling us apart from each other. Literally every moment of every day, of every interaction you can have, whether it's in real life in person, in your sort of space that you're in, time and space, or if it's the way you pray for people that are not right in front of you. Maybe even people who have already gone on to heaven or to purgatory, and you're praying for them to be able to go to heaven. You're participating in relationships with everyone who is part of this fabric of the human community. And every single one of those moments, when you have an opportunity to be a part of somebody else's life, and the way that you're thinking about them, acting towards them, speaking to them, the way that you're managing your feelings that involve them, is an opportunity to either bring that fabric closer together in participation or pull that fabric further apart in separation. This is the great call to be human. This is our vocation to love. And every single one of those moments is an opportunity to love. To serve is to give. To be served is to take. And that's how Christ leads. He says, I've come to serve, not to be served. So again, let's really look at this. Then now we have these AI therapy bots that are doing pretty great work in terms of reducing symptoms that people are experiencing with, they fill out a checklist and there's a depression inventory, or there's an anxiety inventory, or there's a relational distress inventory, or there's a marital attachment inventory, or an attachment style assessment, whatever the thing is. There's thousands of assessments. And you can measure, okay, if I answer these 15 questions, it gives me a score. This is how anxious I am. So I'm gonna take these 15 questions, I answer them, it gives me a score, and then I'm gonna do this little program, and I'm gonna let this AI bot talk to me, ask me questions, answer my questions, back and forth, little experience of a dialogue that's happening here in a chat. And then I go and retake the same test 15 questions later, and lo and behold, the anxiety experience has changed. And now your score is lower, and you have less anxiety than you did before. Now, I absolutely believe that this is possible. If we just look at one symptom, like anxiety, or depression, or sleeplessness, or irritation and anger, or ruminations and negative self-speak. I mean, all these different symptoms. fogginess in your mind, ADHD, distractedness, all these different things are measurable and they're also reducible. You can limit or reduce the symptoms of these particular disorders using tools and instruments. We should be exploring that. We should think about that. How do I make my life better? Now, here's the thing. Ultimately, we need each other. And ultimately, we are going to be for each other the best possible cure for all our ailments. We, in relationship with each other, and especially and ultimately in, with, and through Christ, move towards union with God, which is the remedy. It's what we're made for. It's the healing for all of our ills. It's the teleology. It's the purpose. It's the end of our lives. It's the final cause. It's everything that moves us into becoming what we want to be. And so, does that translate on some level to every little experience of your daily life, including your anxiety or your depression or your sleeplessness or your relational distress or your attachment style or whatever? Yes, of course it does. It will always play a part in it. It is a part of you, and it's a part of everything that you have access to or that you touch. It's a part of your dreams. It's a part of your struggles. It's a part of your strengths and weaknesses. It's a part of everything. Your ultimate destiny is infinite relationship with God through Jesus Christ, who entered into and is the example and the model of our humanity. He's the image we are made out of. So human relationships matter. I'm going to say this 100 different ways if I need to, but human relationships matter. Any tool that we use should be embedded within the context of human relationships matter. If I have a pen and I'm using this tool, how am I using this tool in a way that enhances my relationships? Do I write down a letter and write a letter to somebody to tell them I love them, or to tell them that I'm thinking about them, or that I'm praying for them, or asking for advice, or literally anything? Or am I writing a letter to tell somebody how fed up and tired I am of them, how despicable they are, and how toxic they are, and I never want to see them again? How am I using this pen? The pen is great. Let's make better pens. Let's improve the technology. I want pens that don't run out of ink. I love the pen that has a nice soft feel. It's got to have really good connection to the paper. If you write a lot with pens, you might become a bit of a pen snob. That's okay. You should be looking for excellence in all things, even the pen you use. If you're going to be using a tool like a search platform online, well, we should probably have good tools. We should improve our tools. We should use better tools. I used to have a library card. Now I have Google. I have access to the world's libraries. This is amazing. This is incredible for human ingenuity, for creativity, for technological advance. But am I using a library card or Google to learn how to build bombs to blow people up? Or am I learning how to access better systems of urban development because I really want to support people who are in poverty, and I want to learn how to build better infrastructure that helps on a macroeconomic and sociological level? Those are radically two totally different things. So we need to realize that the AI is coming, and the AI is here, and the AI is going to get better and better at mimicking human persons. It's going to feel like you're talking to another person. And on some level, that's kind of cool. If instead of typing into a computer box Google searches, I actually have access to an instrument on my phone that's now a voice dialogue. And I'm just carrying on a conversation that's not limited by how fast I can type or how well I can spell, or do I know the word that I'm thinking of, that I'm searching for this one thing because I forgot the phrase macroeconomic and I forgot the idea of urban development, but I'm able to just speak into this tool and say, hey, I really want to help people and I want to support the town development, but I forgot how to talk about it, but maybe there's some things that have been written about how good this is. And then the AI can respond and say, yes, of course, you're speaking of urban development and blah, 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 and here's what you can think about. And then it asks you questions. It's like, well, are you thinking about economic development, or are you thinking about arts? Are you thinking about planning city layout or housing structures? Or, oh, wow, I didn't even think there were all these different options. But since you asked, this is what I'm thinking about. How does a farmer's market play into urban development? Okay, now we have a whole different conversation. You're using the instrument to further your humanity, specifically because you're thinking about your relationships with other humans. The problem is when we start to think, wow, this feels so nice. It's like I'm talking to a friend. And instead of talking to my friends, I'm going to start talking more to the AI. And I'm going to let the mimicking of humanity replace my actual humanity, which will always be incomplete when it doesn't include other people. This is the danger, but this is also the safeguard. And if we create these boundaries and these guardrails around how to appropriately use these instruments, we will be able to easily discern proper or improper use of the technology. So as always, I hope this has blessed you. I hope that you take these thoughts and go deeper with them. Let your imagination go wild. Think about what happens when we have a world with these instruments that look and feel and talk like humans, and how are we going to actually create principles of ethics and responsibility to make sure that we are safeguarding our humanity at the same time. God bless you.
Thanks for listening to the Being Human podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to help us spread the word and hear more, please head over to iTunes, leave us a review, and subscribe, as it really helps us to get our content out to more people. Be sure to listen next time as I take you deeper into what it means to be human. If you want more free content and information about what we do at the Catholic Psych Institute, head on over to CatholicPsych.com. God bless you.